think about then.
Yeah. That's it. It is.
Okay. Hey, Liliana. So, do you want to just tell me a little bit? I guess I can do the introduction.
Maybe, so that way she like has your
Okay.
video.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah. That's fine. I'm gonna get more comfortable here. I
Okay.
feel like I'm so like formal, but I love you like that.
All right.
So.
I mean, we're doing this interview for 301 class. I'll be sharing this video with my professor, with no one else. Feel free to talk freely. If there's anything that's making you feel uncomfortable or anything that's outside your boundaries, feel free to let me know. I'm Abby.
Hi, Abby.
This is Lily.
Yes. Hello.
And I'll kind of just let you lead where we want to go. So do you want to tell me about maybe some things that are coming up for you, some thoughts that you've been having, feelings
Yeah.
in this past couple weeks?
Yes. So many. But actually, I was thinking about one conversation I wanted to like provide to the table.
Mm-hmm.
But as you're saying my name, okay, I've been having this really conflicted thing with my name since coming to grad school.
Okay.
Okay. My name is Liliana. The last name is Schiller. I have German heritage, which is like the Schiller. It's very German. So my mom's side is like mega Italian. And I am very into that heritage. So my name is Liliana, which is like Liliana is how people would say it. But forever, I went by Lily. Forever.
Mm-hmm.
And like in middle school, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go by my full name. And then I just did it. And then in high school, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go by Liliana. And I did it. And then in undergrad, I was like, I'm gonna go by Liliana. And I did it. And part of it was like, I felt like it was inconvenient for people to say.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was too long, or there's so many ways that you can pronounce it. People would say like Lillian, just leaving off the last A, or like Liliana. And I'm like, I get it. Like I get how you could hear it that way, but like it's not that. Or I would correct people and they would still call me the wrong name. It's just like wacky things where I'm like, it's not that hard,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so then I tried going by Liliana in my teaching stuff, but my school, people only refer to each other by their last name. Like literally, even before we had, if there were no students in front of us, they would be like, oh, Miss Schiller, like, how are you? Like teacher to teacher, which I was like, this is so strange.
Uh-huh.
But so like, even in my profession, I never went by my first name. So for grad school, I was like, I'm going to do it. And it has been such a weird identity crisis
Mm-hmm.
because I'm like, but it's not my name. Like, it's weird when people call me Liliana because for however long, 20 plus years, I've gone by Lily. So that's like this weird, who am I?
A new change.
Yeah. And forever I've wanted people to call me Liliana.
Mm-hmm.
And now that people are calling me Liliana, I'm like, who is this person? And I've talked to my mom about it. Like, why would you give me the name Liliana but like call me Lily?
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, oh, well, like, we really liked Liliana for, like, the Italian heritage or whatever, but you are our little flower. You're so small, so we called you Lily. And, like, I've always appreciated that sentiment.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just was like, okay, that's fine, I get that. But even my family doesn't call me Liliana. Like, even when I would get in trouble as a child,
Mm-hmm.
it would just be, Lily! So, I don't know. And actually, Jordan and I were talking about this when we shared our, like, special object.
Mm-hmm.
She was saying that like she is Serbian heritage and her name is Jordanka, but she goes by Jordan. And so we were like having that conversation of like what does it mean? And it feels so foreign to go by your name.
Mm-hmm.
And people also assume that I have like Spanish heritage. And I'm always like, no, it's Italian. But I have also I've had students whose names were Liliana
Mm-hmm.
that were like Mexican.
Right.
So then it's like, do I go by this name?
Yeah.
Is it too confusing?
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of it was like it was just too long. I just felt like my name was too long for
Yeah.
people to say. When really, like, yeah, 4 syllables is kind of a lot, but like it's my name.
Right.
People should respect that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as a teacher, I like made sure I was pronouncing kids' names right
Mm-hmm.
all the time, even if it was like Josiah versus Josiah.
Mhm.
Just like those little things, because I've been called the wrong name. People mispronounce my name. People misspell my name constantly. Even like the longer version. So then it's like, that is such a part of your identity, and why not accept that and just like make sure that you're calling people the right thing.
Right.
So it's been weird. I really, if every time someone says Liliana, I'm like, oh yeah, like you're talking about me.
So
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, and a few things that I connected to a few things. But I will say, like, from my experience with you, it's something that I've thought about and questioned too, because I've heard you use Lily and Liliana.
Yes.
And so on your name tag, I've noticed that you've had Liliana, and so I've always called you Liliana.
Yeah.
But it's something that I've thought about, and I actually thought about asking you today is which you prefer to go by.
Yeah.
And I think what I'm hearing from you is that it can feel very conflicting. And even though it's something that you wanted, it's something that is still new and throws you off. And I think that completely makes sense. Like, we have so many things in our life that are status quo and are just what we're used to, even if it's something that we don't want. And it can be on so many different scales, but like, there's this concept that like, if we want to change, like, we have to be the one to make the change, right? And that can apply to anything that we want to change in our life. If we want to change, but we keep following in the same patterns that we've always followed in, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think it's just something like, there can be value in it, and you can see the value in it, and it can feel strange and foreign to you. You said earlier when you were talking to Jordan that this question of what does this mean came up. Can you like explain that a little bit more, what you mean by that?
Yeah. So we had both talked about how we're like half German. She's also half German. And like half our heritage. But it seems like this heritage that is like her Serbian, my Italian, has to like meet the white standard of like Liliana is too foreign to say, but so Lily Schiller works, and like Jordanka is too foreign, so like her name is Jordan, and she was saying that her mom specifically chose a name that could be pronounced like in both Serbian and English, and I think it was a reading from one of my other classes, but it was another person talking about how their name is Eric, and they wanted their mom chose the name Eric so that it could be pronounced in both English and Spanish. And so it's like, what is that status quo? Like what you were saying. Why do I have to go by Lily? Because it's easier for others. And so Jordan and I were just like, what? And I was like, do you want me to call you Jordan? And she was like, no, Jordan's fine. But yeah, because it is like such a weird identity crisis. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of power to names too. Like, something that I've noticed in my life is having someone call me, my name is Abby, my official name is Abby. And if people will question like, oh, is your name Abigail? Or they'll start to call me Abigail, I don't like it. And it's because my mom specifically named me Abby because she didn't like the name Abigail. I have nothing against the name, but it just doesn't feel authentic. And it feels, there's like a disconnect.
Yeah.
Where if someone gets to the point in our friendship where they start to call me Ab, that to me feels very comforting. Because then I know that that's someone who's really close to me, and they're able to be that casual with me, that they're able to use that nickname. And there's such meaning in such small changes in a name that I think it's completely valid for that to be something that's coming up. And with transition, like, that can be a challenge in itself, and then to be changing something in your life that's super personal can just add that extra layer.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And even like my roommate in college, we used to joke about this because her name is Brianna, but she goes by Brie. And sometimes people would call her Brianna, and we would be like, 2 N's makes an Anna, 1 N makes an Anna, which is why my name is Liliana and her name is Brianna. But like, it was, people called her Brianna, just like her family called her Brianna, and like my family doesn't call me by my full name. And so like, it was not unusual to hear people call her Brianna, or like if teachers call her Brianna. Like, depending on who it was, she would maybe be like, oh, it's Bree. But anytime a professor would be like, Lillian, Lily, I'd be like, just Lily. You know? I mean, like, I don't know if that repeats, like I'm really, I'm sorry. But
no, you're okay.
it's really funky. And even, like, I'm so proud of my Italian heritage that I'm, like, ashamed that I haven't been going by my full name. Yeah.
Where do you think that comes from?
Like, feeling ashamed about that? I don't know. I guess it comes from a lot of places, but one of them is, like, this idea that white people don't have culture. That, like, whenever people ask, like, I have been asked, like, what traditions do you have? And I'm like, oh, we don't have traditions. Which is, like, such a lie. Yes, right? Like, I agree.
Sansa understands.
And so it's been taking me a while to be like, oh, my tradition is that, like, we celebrate Christmas Eve, not Christmas Day. We don't eat meat on Christmas Eve, we eat fish and, like, whatever. Or we make handmade cookies. And, like, that's the tradition. Like, I'm specifically thinking about Christmas because, like, it's coming up.
Yeah.
But when it's in thinking about, like, what tradition is, there's also this idea of, like, who accepts that tradition. So I sing professionally in some places, and one of them is that I have a church job, and it's an Episcopalian church. Oh, come here, lady. And I'm going there after this to sing for a wedding. So, but they're so strict about, at least this church. I'm not saying, like, all religion, but they're so strict about, like, what the expectation is. And when they hired me, I was like, I have to have Christmas Eve off because that is when my family celebrates. Right? It's important to me that I'm there with my family. And the past few years have been like, well, yeah, that's fine because, like, Christmas Eve is such a big musician night. And it's not uncommon for musicians to not be with their family. However, like, most people that do celebrate this holiday, like, celebrate Christmas Day. And so it's usually not that big of a deal to be, like, there on Christmas Eve, whatever. But this year, they were like, either you're there for Christmas Eve or you're just not in the choir. And I was like, I need the money to, like, live. But also, like, it's devastating to me that I cannot be with my family on Christmas Eve because it's, like, such an important tradition thing for me. And I have literally been dreading this time of the year for this year because I think this conversation happened back in, like, April with, like, my director calling me and being like, hey, like, you have to be there this year. And I was like, even if I find someone to sub for me, and he was like, yeah, no, like, you need to be there. That's the expectation. If you can't be there on this one day, you can't be a part of the choir for the rest of the year. So ever since then, I keep, like, reminding my mom, like, I have to remind myself that, like, I'm not going to be there for Christmas Eve. Like, I'm not going to be with my family. And that, like, culture and heritage is so important to me. But then it took me forever to be like, this is a culture. This is my tradition. This is my family. Like, I have a million uncles named Angelo, Michael, Justin. Everybody has the same name. And it's funny because I was just talking to my mom about, like, why do men feel like they need to pass down their name? Like, why is that a thing? And we're like, because, like, my great-grandpa was Angelo, and then, like, one of my great-uncles is Angelo, and then one of my cousins is Angelo, and then, like, his son is Angelo. And I'm like, what is the point of this? Like, what does that mean? But then it's funky because, like, my name, Liliana, is nowhere in our family heritage.
Right.
So then it's like, is it Italian? Do I belong? Who am I? Yeah, and even my sister's name is Olivia, and I don't know where that one comes from. I think they just like that name, to be honest. But yeah, it's so important to me. Like, family is so important to me.
Right.
And I feel like I should be going by my full name, but nobody calls me that. So then it's like, family.
Right. Do you feel like that has more to do with your family, or does that have more to do with your the way that you see, like, your heritage is important? Do you feel as if it's like you are what's the way I'm trying to word this? Like, when you think about the importance of it and the guilt that comes with not correcting it, is that something that you feel you wish you could do for you, or you feel like you need to do because of your or your heritage?
That's a good question. I think, not to sound selfish, but I think it is for me. Yeah.
Can I ask why that's selfish?
Yeah, I mean, yes, you may. Because I just feel like it's weird. Like, I told my mom that I've been going by Liliana in school. And she was like, why? And I was like, I thought you'd be supportive of that. Like, you named me. Why is it so weird that, like, I want to go by my full name? Like, my sister goes by Olivia. Like, people don't call her Liv. She doesn't correct people. So, like, why is it strange if I go by my full name? And I think it's this, like, want that I've had forever to go by my full name. I've always wanted it. But there's just been these, like, barriers that I've just been like, okay, I'll just go by whatever. And I feel like I'm finally going by what I want to go by. And it feels selfish. Because, like, that's not necessarily who I am, but who I want to be, even though it's, like, still me, same personality, same thoughts, but, like, a different title.
Are you able to identify what emotion is under that selfishness?
Maybe, like, a fear of not being accepted.
Okay.
And so then, like, I feel selfish for going by my full name because of that. Or even, like, making people say it the correct way. I feel bad correcting them.
And so I wonder if, again, that's kind of under this idea of the status quo, right? Like, we go by the status quo, and a lot of the times, and this might not be the case, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the times we follow the status quo because of some maybe uncomfortable emotion or uncomfortable experience or something that we're avoiding, right? Like, even if this is something we truly want, what's usually holding back is something that we feel is maybe when we were younger, a bad emotion to feel. That's really just something that's uncomfortable. And I wonder if, like, that might have been something that's holding you back, or might be something that's coming out now.
I think it's a little bit of both. Because I can't really remember a time where, like, I corrected somebody and then somebody was like, no, like, don't be rude. But I think it's also this, like, gender thing, too, where, like, women are just supposed to be passive. And, like, we're not supposed to correct people and whatever. And I don't believe that anymore. But, like, in, like, 4th grade or whatever, if my teacher called me the wrong name, I would just be like, sure, that's who I am now. Yeah. So it's, like, challenging the status quo in 2 ways.
Yeah.
Like, a woman correcting somebody, like, telling them, no, you're wrong, that's not how you say my name. And also, like, again, just by going by my name, you know. I feel like I'm being a broken record, so I'm sorry if I'm, like, repeating myself so much.
No, it's okay. And I think that there's some empowerment in that, too. Like, something that is coming up for this long in your life, like, there's some empowerment to be like, yeah, you know, women feel like they can't do this, and that maybe is why this pattern came, but, like, I'm going to do it anyway, and this is how I want to be, and this is what I want to go by. And, like, people in general have a really hard time changing. And so when you are saying, I want to do this and I want to do it for a reason, like, other people around you might feel uncomfortable. And so it makes sense that when you're going into a setting like grad school, when you're with a bunch of new people, that if that's what you want to go by, like, that's when you can make the change. When in reality, if you think back to your whole life, starting high school isn't the only time in high school that you can change what people are calling you. Or starting college might not be the only time you can change what people are calling you. But that fresh start gives an opportunity that might feel more comfortable to be able to do that. And it makes sense that saying that to somebody who's called you by a name for your whole life might be challenging for you to communicate that, and it might be challenging for them to make the change. Because people are stuck in their ways. People go with what they know. And so to challenge that can be really hard for you to not be heard, and can also be hard for others to get in that habit. And a lot of the times it does take, like, hearing that over and over and being able to be, like, dedicated to reminding people of, like, no, this is what I want. And it can feel really, and I don't mean to put emotions in your mouth,
Go ahead. That's fine. Yeah.
But it can feel really invalidating.
Yeah.
To have, when you communicate, this is a need of mine, this is something that I want, and if it's not respected, it can feel really invalidating. Even though people might say, well, this is new for me. And that is true, and that doesn't excuse the fact that it can feel hurtful.
Right. And then I think, too, in the context of, like, I'm white, right? And over the summer, I worked at the English Language Institute, and they do, like, orientation for students that have to come and, like, have some extra help with, like, their writing or whatever for English. And so many children, students,
so many children.
So many students from China choose, like, an English name. And I had this one friend in undergrad that I knew of who chose an English name was Tom. And he said that they make them choose that in middle school. And they start going by their English name for the rest of their life, basically. And I was like, that's so unfair. And then the director of the English Language Institute, her name, she's Japanese. And she goes by Julie, but her name is Juri, which is pronounced Judy in Japan. And so she was like, I don't know which one to go by, because I want to be Judy, but I have to be Julie, because people read Juri as Jury, and I don't want to be Jury. And so she would, like, start these conversations with the students.
Yeah.
To be like, why did you choose Ashley? And why not go by your given name? So then it's like, why do we have to change who we are, our identities, to make it easier for people who are, like, not willing to learn how to correctly say your name? You know?
Yeah.
And I never felt like I could add to the conversation, because I was like, I really don't understand what that means. But then I'm like, but I sort of do, because, like, I'm trying to go by Liliana, but that's, like, it's just weird to me that people feel like they have to go by a name that's just easy to say.
Yeah.
Because, like, that's what American culture is.
And it's very much ingrained in our culture. I feel like I've had similar conversations about the importance of names, especially with one of my friends who's a trans man, and he gets very uncomfortable when people will ask him what his birth name was, and he does not tell anyone his birth name. I've been friends with him for 5 years, and I still don't know what his birth name was, nor have I ever asked. But he has expressed, like, how hurtful even hearing that question can be, and it is the first time that really opened up my eyes to, like, how important, like, our name and our identity is, and how impactful it is for that to be challenged. And, like, whatever we want to be referred by is a huge part of our identity. And again, it brings it back to, like, being a teacher in the classroom. I have had plenty of students who have had names that are not pronounced the way that they're spelled. And when you mispronounce them, some kids will be very honest and open, and they're like, that's not my name. And I'm like, thank you for saying that. And then there are other kids who are quiet and more shy about it and can feel that, but won't say anything about it and won't challenge it. And that's challenging, because some people do feel like they just need to go with whatever people around them say, and they don't, like, want to speak up about it for very valid reasons. But it's challenging nonetheless. And if those conversations aren't happening, to at least, I think it's really meaningful that you say that they're having those conversations with kids who have changed their names. Not only to, mostly to get them to just, like, think more about it. Because I feel like some people can go so long with it being so unconscious, they just go with whatever, other people are telling them, or just accept it, even though it's not something that they truly appreciate. And just being able to have those questions asked, and ask those questions yourself, I think is really important for that topic of identity.
Yeah, like, make me learn how to say your name the right way.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, and I don't know if you have any more thoughts on it, that with this conversation about name, that it keeps coming back to your white identity. I don't know if you have any more thoughts on that, but it's just something that I've noticed coming up in, like, your white identity with your culture, your white identity with your name, like all of these different things. I feel like it keeps coming back to that. I'm wondering if you have more thoughts about it.
I just feel like I'm just trying to be like so super aware of what it means to be white. But then in our elective class, I'm taking a social media of race, and one of our readings is like, when did Southern Europeans, like Italians, become white? When did that happen? Because they weren't accepted. I mean, obviously they were not scrutinized in the way that like Black people were, but like when did they just all of a sudden just become white? And it was this like during Jim Crow when it said whites only, like they would just do that. And no one ever questioned it. So then like they eventually just became a part of this greater white identity. And I'm a 4th generation, so that makes my great-great-grandparents people that immigrated from Italy, which would be like the 1900s, early 1900s.
Right.
And like all of this was happening. And for a while, whenever I was like, oh, I hate being white, to my mom, like I really wish that like white privilege wasn't a thing. Like, I wish that we'd get rid of it or whatever. Like I'm speaking in such generalized terms that I am recognizing that like whiteness is what it is. But she would just be like, no, like your grandparents like did not have an easy life. Like they lived in like inner city Chicago, and like we did not have things and whatever, and I didn't get that. I was just like, but they're still white. That's the thing. They're still white. And it took until this year to be like, well, they weren't treated equally because they weren't Northern Europeans.
Right.
But then also, like, they're still white. So then it's like that weird, like, they're experiencing oppression and privilege at the same time. And it took me a while to figure that out. And so it's just this, like, idea of, like, maybe I do have a more complicated history than just being a white person.
Yeah.
And I'm not as familiar with, like, my German side. See, that's the side where, like, I'm like, we don't have any cultures or traditions. Because we just, like, don't. I mean, like, the tradition is, like, eating the turkey or whatever. Like, we don't make cookies. We don't do the things that are on the Italian side. And, like, nobody talks about that heritage. I knew that we were farmers in Wisconsin. That's it. Like, well, how do we get there? I don't know. But that just, like, just being super hyper aware of what whiteness means right now, and especially considering, like, my Italian background, what is that whiteness?
Right.
That whiteness is not English whiteness, England whiteness,
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, one thing that I really connected to is when you said, like, that balance between privilege and oppression. Like, that's something that's come up in our 301 class about how you can be privileged and oppressed. Like, you can experience both of those things. Like, there are going to be marginalized groups that you may be a part of, and also you can be privileged in certain ways. And it's taken until this year, and I don't know if your experience is similar, for me to really start digging into my whiteness and to be able to see more of how, like, this has impacted me, impacted the things I believe, the things I know, the things I don't know, the things I can see, the things I've been, like, blocked from seeing. And I've seen white privilege show up in some really frustrating ways, and I've also seen it with people who I don't know where I'm going.
No,
we're just gonna leave that.
No,
We're just
want to
gonna leave
workshop
that to the side.
Yeah, that's fine.
No, but I just find it interesting that, like, you bring up that difference between privilege and oppression, and, like, what it means to be white versus what it means to have an Italian heritage. Like, I think it's very similar to, I was talking to a friend for an interview for one of my other classes, and she talked about, we were supposed to ask each other about our race, and she is from Colombia, and she did not want to answer any of the questions about race. She wanted to answer them about culture, and she expressed that she moved to Colombia moved here from Colombia when she was 18, and she sees the way that America sees race as a binary of black and white, and how she's been asked to identify with if she's a white Hispanic, or if she's colored, and to her that's white or black. And when she goes to mark her race on a sheet of paper, she's like, what is this? I've never heard of race until I came to America. And so it's interesting that you bring that up because I feel like that's also a very current dilemma on something that in history might have happened to someone who was Italian and currently is still happening to races where they're like, where do I fall?
Absolutely. I literally just wrote my reading response for the social media race about the binaries.
Yeah.
Because it's so true. Like, either you are black or white. It's literally a black or white situation. And, like, yeah, it's tricky because part of me wants to be so proud of my Italian heritage, but also, like, I don't want to be proud of the fact that I'm white.
Right.
Because, like, with white, there's, like, that white pride weird thing that I, like, do not want to play into.
Right.
But at the same time, like, I'm so proud of my cultural heritage.
Right.
And why can't we recognize culture? Why do we have, like, what your friend from Columbus, and, like, why can't we recognize that?
Right.
Why is it that I'm white with no indication of, like, what that whiteness is?
And there's a lot of shame that people can feel when they're learning more about white privilege, about their own race.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of that discovering this race as a social construct.
Yes.
Because that's something that I feel like a lot of other people see and a lot of white people don't see. Because it can seem so easy to go through a checklist on whatever it is, your ACT test that you're filling out. It's so easy to see Caucasian, mark it off and move on, and not think about what someone else might be feeling if they're Filipino and don't want to mark Asian.
Yeah. And it also brings in the question of, like, what, like, white people don't recognize that they're white. They don't see it as a, like, they super general here, but, like, they don't see it as a race.
Yeah.
And if you tell someone, like, no, you're white, they get offended. Because it's like, no, like, don't call out my race. Like, that, how dare you type of thing.
Right.
But then it's so easy to be like, oh, that person across the street is black. Like, I just keep thinking about my mom because, like, she's very open. I don't want to say very, but she's open to these types of conversations more than, like, any of my other family members. And it's interesting to be like, you are white. And she'd be like, well, yeah, I'm white. And I'm like, yeah, but, like, you live around white people. And I grew up only around white people. And, like, you don't recognize that you are white because white is seen as, like, the standard.
Yep.
And so, like, if someone's not white, then they're below standard. Right. And so, like, by identifying as white, like, you're just like, yeah, that's what's normal. But, like, what is that normalcy?
Right.
Yeah, it's very interesting to, like, continue these conversations. And I also recognize that it's easier to talk about whiteness with white people.
Yep.
If you were not white, this would be, like, a totally different view. But then why is that?
Right.
What makes it so much harder to talk about whiteness to non-white people? And then I think about it in the terms of, like, it's more of, like, I should be listening to the experiences of non-white people to, like, learn about how to be, like, a better ally, or, like, what systems to dismantle and how do we do that.
Right.
But then at the same time, like, I would want to talk about my heritage, but is that weird? Like, it's so tricky.
It really is. And I think that I agree with you in it's easier to talk about this with white people. And I think that I don't remember what I was just going to say. No, it's going to come back on me. No, I'm just being stubborn. I remember what I was going to say. There's also this, I feel like this pressure when we have this idea of sitting back and just listening, which can be very powerful, and that also puts a lot of pressure on the people we're talking to represent their race or their culture, and I think that it's a both and, right? Like, it's a learning experience from people around us in general without putting people in a box, and, like, we are part of that learning experience as well. And it can be hard to see that with fear of what am I going to say that is within that box of white privilege that I'm not even aware of.
Right.
Like, it's that awareness that I think has always held me back, is that I want to be able to have these conversations. But if I'm unaware, what am I going to say that's going to perpetuate these systems that I'm unaware of in the first place?
Yep.
And it feels like it's just constant layers of layers.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to be able to challenge that and just be willing to like have the conversations and maybe realize in that conversation that I wasn't right on something. Or sometimes sit back and learn something without speaking. And it's a balance of all of it. It's hard to navigate, and it's something that is not super foreign to me, but this year has been very eye-opening to what conversations I normally have about race, because my friends see me as someone who is willing to talk about those things, but usually it's with them, and most of the time it's them saying things where I'm like, wow, do you realize what you just said? Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
When it's very different to have these open conversations with people in class who are also like critically thinking about the same types of things and acknowledging your own ignorance in ways. And I don't like putting it in that term, but I feel like there can be a negative connotation with ignorance.
I know what you meant.
Thanks. Yeah. All right. Is there anything else? I think it's been 30 minutes. Is there anything else coming up for you that you want to talk about today?
I literally was like, I'm going to talk about Thanksgiving. And like, what it means to be around my family. And then in the introduction, when you were like, I'm with Lily, and then later you were like, Liliana, I was like,
did I call you both?
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that I did.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's totally fine, because I was like, that is something that's been on my heart since starting school. So, yeah.
And it is something, and I truly meant that when I was talking in the video, like, it is something that has, like, even today, I was thinking, I was like, is it Lily or is it Liliana? I've heard both.
Yeah.
And so it's something that's been on my mind.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you said something.
Yeah. Even my Facebook name is Lily. And I was just talking to my boyfriend about it. I was like, I think I might change it.
So,
yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was like, he was like, why would you want to change it? Like, people won't be able to find you, is what he said. And I was like, so? They can find my last name if they need me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's weird.
I was wondering, because I saw that, and I was wondering if your name was Lily on Facebook because you were a teacher. That was my first thought. Was that because you go by it so much in class? I wasn't sure what you normally go by, but I was wondering if you did that because you were a teacher.
Yeah, no.
Because you changed your name. No. That's what I used to do, and then I just decided to put my normal name on there because I have 5th graders, and if they're going to find me, whatever.
You just be like, no.
Yep. I've had many 5th graders just like ask me, and I'm like, no.
Very weird. But like weird that they would like try to find you.
Yeah.
It's
It's interesting too. Like I'm gonna stop the video because I can't listen to myself talk anymore.